In this week's episode of One Piece, Luffy and his friends finally arrive on Whole Cake Island. Luffy, Carrot, and Chopper are convinced that they have seen Sanji in a massive candy-filled forest. Unfortunately, all they run into is a lot of trouble. Giant crocodiles and, seemingly, a clone of Luffy. Honestly, I think this is about as close as you're going to get to a Willy Wonka anime series. This is an episode which, frankly, is just filled to the brim with all sorts of sweet twists and turns. It's also one of those episodes where, frankly, not that much happened, and most of the episode is devoted to Luffy and his friends ogling over all of this candy. And that mostly being Luffy, Chopper, and Carrot, as they're the most innocent members of this group. And Nami is the one who basically has to play mommy the entire time. You're going to forget that, however, because every single time she's on screen, your eyes are going to be glued to her giant bosoms, which seem to get bigger in every single scene that she's in, and she happens to be wearing an outfit which leaves little to be desired. Don't get me wrong, I'm not complaining, it's just very distracting. With Nami's obligatory boobs out of the way, this was a pretty simple episode of One Piece with Luffy and his friends arriving at Whole Cake Island, and then you have Brook and Pedro who are going off to do their very own thing in the Submerged Six as they try and find the poneglyphs, with Luffy and his other friends free to go on the island and wallow in all of this ridiculous candy. That's because all of Whole Cake Island is, of course, made out of cake, candy, and all sorts of sweets. But there are going to be tons of sour, evil things in this seemingly delicious forest. Case in point, a giant freaking crocodile that's wearing a bowler hat and suspenders that nearly eats all of them alive when they're walking over a candy bridge. Don't you hate when that happens? And to make matters worse, out of nowhere, another version of Luffy shows up, which is an exact mirror of him, even down to the very details, like the scar on his chest and even the things that he's wearing. It's completely mirrored, and apparently this mirror version of Luffy is just as powerful and actually goes into a big battle with him, and it basically just results in a big stalemate. And it almost seems like some sort of big distraction, while you have Carrot and Chopper and Nami, who are desperately chasing after Sanji, who almost certainly is going to be another mirror clone. What I do think is really funny is when they introduce Sanji in this episode, he's hanging out on a tree and he's eating a lollipop. It's like they're giving a big middle finger to the original 4Kids dub of One Piece. And that's pretty much the entire episode. So, what's the rundown on this week's episode of One Piece? This one was just really nice to look at, but it just didn't have that much going for it. It's a shame, too, because it opens up with like a whole 6-minute recap, so you know you're definitely not going to get much out of this episode. And most of the episode really is just dedicated to Luffy, Carrot, and Chopper just enjoying all of this candy. And yes, it is fun to actually experience that with them, but the fact that the last couple episodes have pretty much been the same exact thing, with them just ogling all of these delicious sweets, it's just honestly starting to give me diabetes. That being said, I still absolutely love the design of Whole Cake Island and the Whole Cake Forest, which is just a treasure trove of just the most delicious things that you could possibly think of. I want to know what you guys would like to see if you had your very own candy forest. What would be your favorite treat that you would see? For me, it would probably be something ice cream related. My favorite character of this entire episode, though, has to be that big, ridiculous crocodile. This fantastic scene when they're walking across this candy bridge when suddenly this giant, mysterious monster just pops up out of this melon water, and it turns out to be a giant crocodile wearing suspenders and a hat, and he also happens to talk. What I love most about this scene is that Nami actually questions how strange it is, but Luffy's actually the one that reminds her, he's like, well, look at us. We're a bunch of freaks, and besides, look at some of the other crazy shit that you've seen in this series. Talking animals really aren't a big deal anymore. Hell, Chopper and Carrot fill that quota alone, and Carrot continues to just completely impress me with how incredibly inquisitive and super adorable she continues to be. She still feels like a natural member of the Straw Hats. Oda, please let it happen. Please let her be the next Straw Hat Pirate. Luffy having to fight against a clone of himself is certainly an interesting prospect, as he's going to have to come up with a unique strategy to beat him, because every single time they attack each other, they use the same attacks, so they're basically just running into a wall. It's an immovable object meeting an unstoppable force. You know the drill. And while not that much did happen in this episode, it still managed to be entertaining and it still has a wonderful color scheme to look at. If anything, it's still a very pleasant episode of One Piece, and I can't fault it for that. It is still definitely entertaining, even if we are still seeing just sort of the same thing over and over again, with the characters just falling in love with all of this candy architecture. However, I want to say that things are about to get really good. As a manga reader, I do know what is going to happen, and anime viewers, stay tuned, shit about to get real, especially with the introduction of some brand new characters, some of which are teased in the preview for the very next episode, some of which I don't even really want to talk about that much, because I want you guys to experience it for yourselves, especially if you're watching the anime only. I will say, there is a small preview to this in the intro, however. It goes by real quick, but it's definitely there. With that being said, this was still a pretty sickeningly sweet episode of One Piece, which was wholly inoffensive and very watchable, especially for people who've been following the series for a long time. I highly recommend it to anime watchers, and for people who read the manga, I still think it's worth at least one watch, if only to see all of this in motion and to see all of the amazing colors on screen. So, I'm going to give this week's episode a solid 3 crocodiles wearing suspenders and hats out of 5. Check it out, One Piece fans. Make sure to tell me what you want to see from the rest of this brand new Whole Cake Island arc. Remember, what type of candy would you like to find on Whole Cake Island? And what do you hope to see from the rest of the brand new arc of One Piece? Thank you guys for watching this review. Make sure to subscribe to the channel for all things One Piece anime and manga related. Make sure to leave me a comment telling me what you thought about this week's episode. And of course, if you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, give it a thumbs down. I'll see you guys next time. And as always, stay down, baby.